Tonight I want you to sit with a few questions. Not the kind you can brush off in 5 seconds. The kind that stick to you. Think about your last meal for a second. Not the macros. Not the calories. I'm talking about the energy. Where did it really come from? What was carried inside it? And once it hit your stomach, where did that energy actually go? Did it feed the light inside you? Or did it feed something darker? Look, there's a substance that billions of people eat every single day and never question. It's so normal, so everywhere, that even bringing it up sounds crazy. But the Gnostics didn't think it was crazy. They believed it was the main tool of spiritual captivity. And they swore that Jesus himself warned the ones paying attention to stay away from it. Not because of a dietary rule, not because of purity laws, but because that food fuels the Archons directly. That's what we're getting into tonight. Most folks never stop to wonder what their food is made of beyond the physical stuff. They count their macros. They watch their cholesterol. They obsess over sugar and processed junk. But they almost never ask the real question. What kind of energy just entered my body with that meal? What invisible baggage came with it? And who or what is getting fed by my consumption? The Gnostics were asking these questions 2,000 years ago. They understood something most of us have forgotten. This material world isn't neutral. It's a thick soup of energies. Some energies lift your soul toward what they called the pleroma, the divine fullness. Other energies pull you deeper into the fog, the forgetfulness woven by the demiurge. And right at the center of that trap sits one single food. A food so common you've probably eaten it today. A food the Archons rely on to keep their grip on human souls. Jesus knew exactly what was going on. He warned the ones with ears to hear. And that warning got buried so deep that most Christians alive right now have never heard a whisper of it. But the texts didn't disappear. The words survived. And once you hear them, you're never going to look at your dinner plate the same way again. To understand why this food is such a problem, you've got to understand what the Archons actually are. The Gnostics were crystal clear on this. The Archons are not all-powerful. They're not gods in any real sense. They are parasites. They feed on energy that isn't theirs. They can't create a single thing. They can only take. They can't generate light. They can only steal it from you. And their number one food source is human consciousness. Every time you feel fear, they're eating. Every time you get angry, they're drinking. Every time you spiral into lust or greed or hopelessness, you're broadcasting a frequency that keeps them alive. But here's the thing. There's a substance they crave even more than your emotional energy. A thick, concentrated form of life force they can draw from directly. And that substance enters your body right through your mouth. Jesus said something interesting. Not what goes into the mouth defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth. The church took that and ran with it. They said, see, all foods are clean now. Dietary laws are finished. Eat whatever you want. No spiritual consequences. But hold on a second. What if they stopped reading way too soon? What if Jesus wasn't giving a blank check for gluttony? What if he was redirecting attention from empty external rituals to your internal reality? And what if, in private, he gave extremely specific instructions to the ones who were ready? The canonical Gospels go quiet here. But the texts the church banned are loud. In the Gospel of the Ebionites, an early Jewish Christian text that got condemned and buried, Jesus drops a bombshell. He says, I have come to abolish sacrifices, and if you do not cease from sacrificing, the wrath will not cease from you. Then he goes further. He says he didn't come to eat meat at all. He came to restore the original diet of paradise. The Ebionites, who claimed to hold the real teachings of Jesus, were strictly vegetarian. They believed eating animal flesh was a corruption that flooded into the world after the story of Noah. And they traced that corruption directly to the Archons. So why animal flesh specifically? Because it carries the vibration of death. When an animal is slaughtered, it goes through terror and pain and total helplessness. Those emotions aren't just chemicals in the brain. They're energetic signatures. They soak into the flesh. They stay in the cells. And when you eat that flesh, you're swallowing all that fear and suffering. Your body absorbs that frequency. Your subtle energy field gets heavy with the vibration of death. And the Archons, who thrive on death energy, feast on that resonance like it's Thanksgiving dinner. They don't care about your theology. They don't care how many prayers you said this morning. They care about the energetic state of your body. And a body saturated with the terror of dead animals is basically an all-you-can-eat buffet for these entities. The more you eat, the more you feed them. The more you feed them, the more they cloud your perception, stir up your lower passions, and lock you into the cycle of birth and death. Jesus knew this. He taught it to the ones he called the chosen, the ones ready to break the wheel and return to the light. But this teaching was dangerous from day one. It threatened the entire sacrificial system the temple economy was built on. It threatened the meat industry of the ancient world. It threatened the priests making bank from animal offerings. And later on, it threatened the institutional church itself, because the church had woven the consumption of flesh right into its central ritual. Think about that for a moment. The Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ. In the Orthodox tradition, they tell you to eat the flesh and drink the blood of the Savior. That's a straight echo of the old pagan sacrificial cults. The god dies. The followers eat him. The cycle keeps turning. But the Gnostic Jesus rejected that whole framework. He didn't ask his disciples to eat his flesh in some literal or symbolic sacrifice. He asked them to recognize the living Christ inside themselves. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me." Notice he doesn't say, "Eat my dead body." He says, "Drink from my living word." That shift from living teaching to ritual cannibalism was a corruption. It was brought in by people who wanted the faithful dependent on a priesthood that controlled the sacrament, a priesthood that controlled the food supply. Because let's be real here. If the food you eat keeps you spiritually asleep, you'll stay dependent on them forever. Now you might be sitting there thinking, come on, is it really just meat? What about fish? What about dairy? What about bread? The Gnostics weren't all identical in what they ate. Some were hard ascetics living on bread and water. Some were vegetarians. Some ate fish but stayed away from land animals. But the core teaching across the whole Gnostic spectrum was simple. The denser the food, the heavier your spiritual body gets. And nothing is denser than the flesh of a slaughtered creature. It carries a double weight. The physical density of the flesh itself and the emotional trauma of a violent death. When you eat it, you're not just getting protein. You're swallowing a story of fear and separation and death. You are literally building your body out of suffering. And then you wonder why you feel heavy all the time. Why you feel clouded. Why the divine feels so far away. The Book of Thomas, the Contender, another text from the Nag Hammadi library, has Jesus speaking to his brother Thomas. And he says, "Woe to you who love to eat the flesh of beasts, for your mind will become like the mind of beasts." He warns that people who consume animal flesh will find their spiritual senses go dull. Their lower passions will catch fire. Their connection to the light will get choked out. He specifically says this kind of eating feeds the fire of the lower nature. And that lower nature is the exact interface the Archons use to control you. See, the Archons can't touch the divine spark directly. The spark is untouchable light. But what they can do is pile so much density around it that you forget the spark is even there. That density comes from what you eat, what you think, what you feel, and what you do. Food isn't the whole picture, but it's the foundation. It's the fuel. And if you're pumping Archon fuel into your system 3 times a day, don't be shocked when your prayers feel hollow and your mind stays chained to the ground. So why was this teaching erased? The answer is painfully simple. Because a church that controls the altar controls the people. If the chosen ones figured out that liberation wasn't in a wafer but in their everyday diet, the whole machine would fall apart. You don't need a priest to tell you to stop eating meat. You don't need a bishop to sign off on your vegetable stir-fry. You don't need a pope to dispense grace into your salad. You just stop eating the food that feeds the enemy. And that kind of liberation can't be taxed or tithed. So the early church fathers, many of them tangled up with Roman political power, made their choice. They declared the vegetarian teachings of Jesus to be heresy. They burned the texts that contained them. They cursed the Ebionites and the Manichaeans and anyone else who taught that diet mattered for salvation. Then they replaced the living, practical teaching with a symbolic ritual. Eat the body, drink the blood, but never ask whether that body is a dead animal or a living truth. That's the great inversion. The Gnostics knew the Archons feed on death energy, so they cut off the supply. They refused foods that carried that signature. They didn't do it to be proud. They didn't do it to earn points with God. They did it to clear the channel, to lighten the vessel, to starve the parasites and wake up the spark inside. And they taught that Jesus himself lived this way from the very beginning. The infancy Gospels, as broken as they are, show the young Jesus refusing meat even as a kid. His mother offers him a meal and he blesses it, but he won't eat the flesh of any creature. He knows where it came from. He knows the suffering behind it. And he knows exactly who benefits when that suffering enters a human body. The Archons benefit. They need you to carry the vibration of death because their whole realm is a death realm. They can't survive in the frequency of pure life. But listen, life is what you actually are. At your core, you're a spark of the living light. The more you line up your body, your actions, and your diet with that light, the more transparent you become. The Archons literally can't see you if you vibrate above their range. But if you weigh yourself down with death, you become completely visible to them. You become a target. You become a feeding station. And they will not let you go without a fight. They'll send cravings. They'll send slick rationalizations. They'll send doctors, nutritionists, friends, and family members telling you meat is natural and necessary and healthy. They'll mock vegetarianism as some kind of weakness. They'll say Jesus ate fish. They'll accuse you of falling for heresy without ever realizing that gnosis, direct knowing, is exactly what you're called to. One who knows. One who sees through the curtain. One who chooses light over density every single time. So what's the one food Jesus warned the chosen ones to avoid? It's the flesh of slaughtered animals. It's meat. Not because the animal is evil. The animal is innocent, caught in the same messed up system you are. But because the act of slaughter generates an energetic charge that the Archons feed on directly. And when you eat that flesh, you become the carrier of that charge. You become the host they feed through. Break that cycle and you starve the enemy. Keep it going and you stay their meal. I'm not standing here judging what's on your fork right now. I'm not here to condemn anybody. I'm here to deliver the warning that got buried for 2,000 years and to let you decide for yourself. Because the chosen ones aren't chosen by some random God playing favorites. They're chosen by their own willingness to see, to question, and to change. If you've felt a heaviness you can't explain, a darkness that hangs around even when you pray, a fog that no spiritual practice seems to cut through, take a hard look at what you're putting into your body. Ask yourself whose energy you're really consuming with every meal. And ask yourself if you're ready to starve the Archons and start feeding the light instead. Try this for yourself. Just 1 week. Cut animal flesh out of your diet completely. All of it. Meat, poultry, fish, anything that had a face and a heartbeat. Replace it with food that grew in the sun. Fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes. Foods that carry the vibration of life, not death. Pay attention to how your body feels. Watch your mind. Notice if your dreams shift, if your prayer feels deeper, if your inner vision starts to clear. This isn't about nutrition science. It's about resonance. It's about stripping out the static the Archons use to jam your signal. It's about taking your body back as a temple of the living light. The early Gnostics knew all of this. They lived it. They died for it. Their texts were burned, their communities scattered, their names scrubbed from history. But the truth they protected can't be burned. It's written into the very fiber of your being. Your body knows what it was designed to eat. Your soul knows what it was designed to avoid. And the voice of Jesus, speaking through those suppressed gospels, still echoes across the centuries. Woe to you who love to eat the flesh of beasts, for your mind will become like the mind of beasts. That's not a condemnation. That's a diagnosis. A diagnosis of the spiritual amnesia that's keeping humanity enslaved. And the cure is sitting right there on your plate. So tonight, I want you to ask yourself one last question. Not, is this teaching true? But, what have I been feeding? The Archons or the light? The density or the spark? The death cycle or the living Christ inside you? Answer it honestly. And then move. Because the chosen ones aren't the ones who just hear the word. They're the ones who do something with it. They're the ones who change. They're the ones who starve the rulers of this age and start rising into the fullness of the pleroma. That path is open to you. It's always been open. It starts with a single meal, a single choice, a single refusal to let the darkness eat through you any longer. If this hit something in you, let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Gnostic Archive. We're here uncovering truths that got buried beneath the surface of reality. Truths the world taught you to ignore. Truths that wake up the spark inside you. Because the real journey doesn't start inside a church building. It starts inside your body. It starts in your kitchen. It starts with what you put into your mouth. And that right there is where the real journey begins.